Hi, this is Alex Behrens with Maple Leaf Coffee Roasters in Roselle. I'm here today to talk about the November Club Coffee, a great natural processed coffee from Brazil. Check it out. So as a reminder, everyone, the Coffee Club program is something that we at Maple Leaf Coffee Roasters do to introduce people to some off the normal path kinds of coffees. Every month we bring in a special club members only coffee that we roast 3 different ways. We send out a whole bunch of notes and information about the coffee to our members and give them the choice of one of those 3 different roasts, depending on what their flavors and preferences and options might be. We also try to provide a little bit of help to folks to figure out which one might be the best coffee to choose based on their current preferences as well. So it's a fun program. If you're interested in joining, either send us a note via email, check us out on Instagram, or come into the shop anytime you can, and we'll be happy to describe and get you signed up for the program as well. But this month we have a natural processed coffee from Brazil, and one that is a yellow bourbon strain. So sometimes when people hear the term bourbon with coffee, they think about a bourbon barrel aged or something with liquor. Bourbon strains of coffees are actually a different type of coffee strain. And bourbon variety coffees come in a couple different color types, but a yellow bourbon is one of the strains of bourbon coffee that usually result in a softer, creamier, a little bit more of a fruity types of coffees that have some interesting kind of complexity to them as well. And this is one that definitely you can tell is a little bit different than the normal Brazilian coffees that we've had. The other fun aspect of this coffee is a natural process that uses an anaerobic process as well. And as the name might imply, an anaerobic process will deprive the coffee of oxygen during some of the fermentation, and that sort of causes the coffee to spread some of the different gases that it's giving off during that fermentation process and imbue the coffee with a little bit of extra characteristics and flavors that you will not normally see out of a wash process or a strictly natural process coffee on its own. So this is an exciting, complex coffee that has some very interesting similarities among the 3 different roasts, but also some differences between the 3 of them. And I think this month, this is a really interesting and fun coffee that at first glance, I would be hard pressed to say that this is a Brazilian coffee if someone put this in front of me, but it's got some just interesting things going on in it nonetheless. So this coffee was a pretty straightforward coffee to roast. Nothing super particular or interesting about the roast process. The only difference that I saw with this coffee in the roasting process is that it did have a higher amount of chaff in it than normally we see out of a Brazilian coffee. Generally speaking, Brazilian coffees are pretty easy to roast, nothing super exotic on the roasting process. But this one did have a little more chaff going on in it, and although neither the light, medium, or dark roasts has a bunch of chaff still on the beans themselves, during the roasting process it did produce a lot more chaff than usual. And that's something that you generally see as a type of quality that you see out of an African coffee, having a little bit higher chaff content, not usually out of a Central American coffee. So nothing super special about this one in the roast process this month. The light roast this month came out to be a creamy, chocolatey, mildly fruity, some floral, citrusy tones as well. As I said, all 3 of these roasts do have a certain complexity to them that's kind of interesting and different than what I usually expect from a Central American coffee. It had the interesting kind of berry tone to it, kind of a grape, almost dry fruit sort of feel. We also saw a little bit of a kind of Guatemalan-like brightness to it, not as sharp or sharply tinted as a Guatemalan coffee will usually be on a light roast side, but definitely had kind of a brightness to it that was fun, but very mellow taste. So if you're a person that likes a light roast for the kind of brighter feel, but you don't want something that's sharp in the stomach, if you're a person that especially goes for the Mexican coffees that we have from time to time because of the creamy consistency to them, the light roast would be a really great thing to try this month because of that creamy feel to it without a kind of sharp, tart or too bright of a flavor overall. There was a tiny bit of kind of vanilla tint to it as well. On the medium roast side, we saw more of that kind of vanilla, sweeter tint kind of come into play. Not much in the chocolatey variety either. Once we started edging into the medium roast territory, that's when we start seeing some more of the vanilla, sweeter tones, more chocolatey kind of feels. On the medium roast side, this is where we started seeing some of the nutty characteristics of this coffee come into play. I found that this coffee was very balanced, easy to drink, much more creamy than the light roast, but not as bright, of course, as light roasts will generally be. This had much more of the chocolatey feel to it as well. Not quite a milk chocolate, not quite a dark chocolate, but just maybe a little bit of a mix between the 2. And you also saw a nice kind of maple syrupy aspect to this as well. Not a super thick mouthfeel like a syrupy coffee might be, but the medium roast in this case was a nice blend between the light and the dark in terms of the flavors, but also in terms of the overall mouthfeel. I think if you want something that kind of strikes you a little bit more like a Mexican coffee in terms of the mellow, almost syrupy nature of it, but you still want something a little bit chocolatey on the sweeter side, this is going to be a really great option on the medium roast side this month. And you get a little bit of a tiny, subtle, nutty flavor to it as well. But very similar to the light roast in terms of the overall feel and that creamy flavor, very easy on the stomach, not sharp or tart at all. Medium roast is a great option this month too. On the dark roast side, it still retained a lot of that creamy feel, the kinds of flavors that you normally don't see out of a dark roast. I think this month, this dark roast is one that retained a lot of character despite being a dark roast. Generally speaking, when we roast a coffee dark, what you'll usually see is more of the roasty tone out of it. You'll taste kind of a burned or bitter or smoky kind of flavor if it's done kind of incorrectly, but generally you'll have a kind of a heavier body to it, something that will stand a little bit heftier on its own. And this is one that still retained that kind of creamy flavor. So interesting thing about this coffee this month is all three roasts very similar in flavor in a lot of ways. They had a creamy, vanilla, sweet kind of tint to them, but each one was different enough that you could definitely tell that you were drinking a light, medium, or dark each time. And the dark roast this time had enough distinction to it, I think, is a really exotic kind of feel. This dark roast had a nice cinnamon tint to it as well. Not as chocolatey as the medium roast was, but that extra kind of cinnamon vibe to it, I think, again, nice fall flavor, especially in November. A little bit of a floral tone, so I felt like the light and the dark had some more similarities to them than either the light to the medium or the medium to the dark. So if you're a person that doesn't normally drink dark roasts because you don't like a heavier coffee, this is a Brazilian coffee that has like not a ton of body to it. And usually in a dark roast Brazilian, you'll see kind of a heft to it that it stands pretty well on its own. This one's not a light coffee by any means, even in the dark roast, but it will not be a super bowl you over, kind of hit your palate really hard like a lot of dark roasts sometimes will. So I think if you're a person that's interested in trying a dark roast, if you're trying to try something a little bit different this month, as opposed to the months that you normally do, the dark roast will make a really great option because of that creamy quality to it. And you have a nice kind of dark chocolate note to it as well. So definitely, maybe this month, if you're a person that normally goes for a light, try the dark. If you're a person that normally goes for the dark, try the light. And if you're a person that usually stays in the medium in the middle, might be a time to try something on the light or the dark end too. I think any three of these coffees makes a great choice. They all have something super interesting going on in them, but it's surprising to me personally that they all taste very similar to each other in a lot of ways. And some of that is due to the processing method, some of that's due to the bourbon strain. You definitely wouldn't strike this as a coffee from Brazil on first taste. I think it's going to be a little bit of a surprise to a lot of people who might be coming into a Brazilian coffee with a certain expectation to try something this kind of different and distinct than what you'd normally see out of Brazil. So if this sounds like an interesting program to you, make sure to hit us up, check us out, the Coffee Club information on this video. And if you're interested in learning more, I'd love to talk to you about the Coffee Club. And until then, I will see you all next month for another great club coffee. Catch you soon.